Aloha, everybody. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio, and this is June 23rd, 2017. Good Lord, can you imagine? It's already almost half the year. Wow. I got a great show for you tonight. I have this incredible friend of mine, Elliott Adams. He's going to come on and talk about Palestine and the Meta Peace team. And before I bring Elliott on, man, I got a few things I just got to get off my breast. Okay. I'm not going to say chest. I'm going to say breast. And I am so tired. Every single day, I see somewhere in the United States where Republican, white, racist, sexist men are really trying to really make it harder and harder for women to even exist. I mean, let's start off with the white racist sexist males that are afraid of strong women leaders. I mean, come on. If a woman starts to move forward, they seem to gang up on her like a hyena pack. And, most people would say they're wolves, but, to me, I really honor and respect the wolf clan. So let's go a little bit lower on the animal chain and call these racist sexist men what they are, hyenas. Oh, yeah. And if you're a woman of color, holy frick. I can't say the really true F word, but if you really want to see it uncensored, go to my Facebook page, okay? But I have to censor this a little bit. So every time I say frick, no, I'm saying fuck. Okay. Anyway, if you're a woman of color, holy crap, just ask Camilla Harris and Maxine Waters. And, from Elizabeth Warren being told to sit down and shut up for expressing your views, along with any woman politician that speaks out for what is right and just, these women are told to sit down and shut up. Please be seen and not heard. Now these jerks are going after Nancy Pelosi. And for what? Speaking out against this new awful health care bill. What the frick? All of a sudden, a woman is speaking out and they start to demonize her. And she's speaking truth. And you best start standing up for these women, guys, because if not, we're going to continue to have white, racist, sexist men making all our decisions in their favor, trying to push us back into the early 1900s. And I've got two words for those guys. F you. Now, if you think my language is a little too colorful, which are, it's better if you read it on paper, uncensored. I personally have learned that unless you use the F word a lot, men don't take you seriously. Sad but true. You talk dick and you get their attention, huh? So what do we do here? What are our options? Well, world enlightenment. That's a biggie. I've talked about it a lot. And doing the energy work that will help these unenlightened beings reconnect to the Creator, to become an awakened spiritual being. And that's our only way out, guys. Sorry, everything else has been tried, but constant energy work. Now, these beings are really lack of light, don't you think? Now, if you got any better ideas, please share. And if they're good, I'll share them and we'll apply it. But in the meantime, let's send these white, sexist, racist men some love to their hearts and let that energy go to the brain and see them being reconnected to the Creator, making decisions that are compassionate and kind, which brings joy to many people, including men, and let this high divine energy flow to them 24/7. And while we're at it, we're going to say the same thing with Mitch McConnell. I have not really seen a more evil man on this planet other than Trump and his cronies, but to push a healthcare plan and to do it secretly and to ignore ignore women. And then you look and see what this bill is. I mean, this man is so lack of light. It's really, really sad. So let's send energy to his heart, because obviously he really needs it, and see his heart cracking from the light being sent to it and that energy going to his brain. And we're going to ask his higher self to help him step forward in the light and let there be complete and total transparency in everything he does. And if he doesn't want to step forward in light, which is his free will, we're going to ask his higher self and guardian angel to put him in a position of total and complete harmlessness letting a light worker that is really human take his place. Now, that can mean putting him in a position of harmlessness that he's removed. He retires. He's gotten out of office, okay, where no one will be hurt or harmed. I just want to make that clear. All right, let's fill that energy up and let's send it to all those white racist, sexist males out there, because they do need help. And women are suffering for it. I mean, the guys, Republicans in Missouri, want to push forward a new law that says if you if you take birth control, a woman, or if you've had an abortion, you're not going to get a job. I mean, come on, guys. This is really beyond words, is it not? And it needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked at. And their awful rules on abortion are making women go to coat hangers again. And that's fact. So please put these guys in your prayers and send them lots of love to their hearts and see it go to their brain and see them doing works of good. Okay, I'm done. Well, welcome, Elliott. And I'm sorry about that. I've just, I tilted this morning when I saw that about women and not being able to get a job because they're been on birth control. Oh, my God. Anyway, are you still there, Elliott?
I am here, and I was listening to what you were saying, and I think we should take a little time talking about it. I think that for anyone to not believe that there is an active war against women in this country, they're not paying attention. I think that, so let's look a little bit historically. So there's some things that come to my mind. So, for example, women right now are earning 62 cents on the dollar to what a man is earning. That's, doing exactly the same job, but just getting 62 cents on the dollar. Now, of course, that is totally not okay. It's just not acceptable. It's not good for women. It's also not good for men. Incidentally, just so people are aware of it, because when you can hire somebody for 62 cents instead of $1, then that pulls the person who is going to get the dollar, their salary down. So men need to understand that they are going to pay a price for that also. Now, we do know that that gap keeps shrinking. It's shrinking steadily. But I'm going to tell you that if your daughter were to enter the job market at age 20 right now, she would get equal pay when she is 62. That is totally beyond reasonable. I mean, that is just totally awful. And I think that we have this sort of idea that somehow this is happening benignly. That somehow is just sort of, I don't know what, the law of nature or something. That isn't the case. The fact of the matter is that the men, that includes me, have been actively, collectively been actively suppressing women, but for some of us, it actually is sort of passive, because we are just sort of accepting things like that, like somehow thinking, oh, well, I guess it's really okay that they're earning 62 cents on the dollar for some reason or other. Another one I think is worth looking at and thinking about is equal rights. Now, we all talk about equality and the U.S. Constitution and how that's supposed to guarantee equality. Yet in this country, let's see, Equal Rights Amendment. It was Alice Paul, 1920, who first proposed an Equal Rights Amendment. Now, an Equal Rights Amendment would be, it's like a no-brainer. We obviously believe everybody should have equal rights, right? That's just obvious. Yet she first proposed the Equal Rights Amendment in 1920. This is now 2017. So that's 97 years. So that's about 97 years that there has been proposals on the table to pass an Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution. And we have not done it for 97 years. That's not an accident. That's not just sort of some benign process. That's happened by a continuous, active, aggressive effort to keep it from happening. Now, I look at that and I think, you know what? We should not allow it to become 100 years. What would be wrong with us as a culture if we were willing to sit back and say, for 100 years, we would have equal rights amendments proposed but not passed? So I think that's our challenge in the next 3 years, is just to pass a damn thing. And I think it's also interesting to look at things like women's suffrage, because I keep hearing people say, well, women were given the right to vote. Women were not given the right to vote. Women took the right to vote. In fact, what actually happened, he was the President of the United States Senate delegate, he was a reporter, to go to Alice Paul in jail and negotiate with her and say, look, I'll tell you what, we can't give you status as a political prisoner, because most of the suffragettes were claiming political prisonerhood, and they were also, most of them were opposed to the war, World War I. But he said, I can't do that, but if you agree to quit your fight for that, then we will agree to acquiesce on a woman's suffrage. And that was won, but that was won because of active resistance. Now, this is not a struggle for women alone. This is a struggle for men too. We all are hurt by this process. We all have to work on it. We men have to work on it for a variety of reasons. One of the reasons we have to work on it is because there's a moral responsibility. If we believe in equality, we have to actively work for it, and we have to recognize that our silence is a very important part of maintaining the injustice. We also have to fight for things like, as I mentioned before, if we allow somebody to get paid less, then that will lower our wage. We also have to work for equality, because if your wife, for example, earns less money than she should, your household has less money than it would. We have to work for equality, because surely you don't want your daughter to be crushed under this kind of aggressiveness. This kind of aggressiveness isn't the word I want. More viciousness. Why on earth should your daughter not have access to equal jobs, equal pay, equal
How
respect?
about health care? Just, you guys, they give guys Viagra in insurance, don't they?
Yes, and what the hell is that about? We absolutely.
Okay, now
care
what about,
in a very real sense.
And then, what do they give us now? What are they doing? They're taking away every single thing for women for health care. You name it. They want it gone.
That's right. And it turns out that almost all of the typical medical issues, or many of the standard medical issues for women are by the insurance companies can be considered as pre-existing conditions. So basically blanketly denying all women insurance coverage. It's just totally outrageous.
You won't give us birth control, yet you get Viagra. Now, how sick and twisted is that?
It is extremely twisted, and it comes back to what I said earlier on. It is unintended pregnancies has historically been one of the strongest, most aggressive controls of women that men have used. And this denying birth control, free birth control under insurance, is absolutely, as you say, it is absolutely a technique for crushing women. That's what it's about. And I'm going to say something else, and this is maybe not my place to say, but we had this massive women's march, as you all recall, and it was one of the biggest demonstrations in the history of the country, and it spawned, I have no idea how many politically active groups that spawn. So in our little area, there's 6 of them. I know of 6 of them in our little area. And they were all, there's men in them. I'm involved with them. I consider myself a men's auxiliary. But one thing that does concern me very much is that of all 6 of those groups in particular, and some other ones I know, none of them have women's issues foremost on their plate. They have chosen to do they're all really important issues. They're global climate change, they're health care, they're all very important issues. But we need to have, in order to, I was about to say create equality for women, but what I should say is, in order to quit this unjust attack on women, we need to get out there. And we need active resistance, active constructive resistance to change this. It's not going to get changed any way other than really, activists really get out there and doing the work. That's what we have to do. We have to get out there and do the work, or it's not going to get done. And damn it, I'm sorry, but we have to. It's crazy. Why are we allowing this kind of injustice to happen? It's kind of like watching black men get killed by white cops and with impunity. These things are wrong, and we have to change them.
Oh, I agree. I mean, yeah, God, I miss talking to you, Elliott. But, we jumped right into the program. So let me just take a step backward and just tell people who you are, other than pretty incredible male, okay? All right, so Elliott Adams has transformed from a soldier to a nonviolent warrior, applying his intellect and body to building movements that create justice. He dedicates his life to stopping all war, and he served as an Army paratrooper infantry in Vietnam, Japan, Korea, and Alaska. He's the national president of Veterans for Peace. President of the school board, mayor of his village, committee chair of BSA, Explorer Post 17, president of Rotary, master of the Masonic Lodge, and he also conducts nonviolent and social movement trainings for organizations all over the place, and really anybody that will that asks you to come, right? And actually, you're going to Palestine, aren't you?
We'll be going back to Palestine. That will not be to be doing nonviolence training. That will be with peace team with a peace team to do third party nonviolent intervention to try to reduce the violence and conflict, which is a pretty standard technique, and we do that both nationally in this country and internationally. And we're working on doing some trainings with the Ochete second one, at Standing Rock Nation. So that's another. We view that as an international team because they are a different nation. They're not our nation. They are a different nation. And it's so. Let me step back and say. Basically, the way we at Meta Peace Team view it is that conflict is normal and conflict is natural. And that's maybe partly a question of words. But if I am going to be an individual, then there's going to be conflict around me because I'm going to be different than the people around me. If we're going to embrace diversity, then we're going to be embracing conflict because people are not going to understand each other. People are going to work together in ways that create friction. But what we would say is that what is not normal and not natural is to have violence in that conflict. So my wife talks about me and my conflict partner. If you're in conflict with somebody, basically you're a partner. Whether you plan it or not, you're a partner. But conflict, you can go down, and it's a journey to be in conflict with somebody. But you can be in conflict with somebody forever. If there's no violence in it, you don't necessarily have to resolve it, and some of them you can't resolve. But the issue is trying to keep the violence out of the conflict. And the way we believe is that, and we have certainly, there's a lot of evidence of it, is that we can help to reduce let me put it this way. Uninvolved people can help reduce the violence in other people's conflicts, and that's the work we do. Whether we do it in the U.S. at demonstrations or conflict situations, or whether we do it in the streets of the cities where there is violence in the streets of the cities, or whether we do it in other countries, is that process of trying to help reduce the violence of the conflicts. Now, one of the fun things about this, or intriguing things about this, is that we all know that if you increase the violence in a conflict, that it is likely to further increase. But the fun part is that if you can decrease the violence in the conflict, it makes room for the further decrease. And we believe that if, hundreds or thousands of people across the country would just get trained to do this kind of work, it could radically reduce the amount of violence in the nation. And indeed, a lot of our work can keep the police from getting involved. And I'm sorry if this offends people, but in general, when the police get involved, things get violent, people get hurt, and it's not a healthy situation. And we would be much better if we can empower communities to reduce that violence in their own community. We try to train people in their community so that they can work on that, and it's a much safer, much healthier, much stronger thing when people take that responsibility for their own community, rather than calling in some kind of authority who they're likely to cause further problems.
Now, since Trump came into power, have you and the Meta Peace team gotten more popular? Have you gotten more?
Yes, there's been a shift. So what we're doing is we're getting a lot more calls for what we call bystander intervention. So instead of the regular peace team work, which is more established, in more established situations, we get a lot of bystander intervention calls for that kind of training. So the difference would be that in regular peace team work, frequently, so let's just say we're going to have a demonstration, and there's going to be people who are going to come who are likely to cause violence. So there was recently a demonstration, a anti-immigrant demonstration, and the organizers put out a call to militia types, asking them to come armed to protect the anti-immigrant people. So this sounds like a potentially a very violent situation. But so in a case like that, when somebody comes as a counter-demonstrator, they came with the intention of demonstrating. So they have they're psychologically engaged. They want to stay there. And let me quickly step over to what I would call bystander intervention. And this is a case where somebody at the coffee shop is attacking verbally or physically, verbally, for example, a woman on a sexist line, or a Muslim on
business can be done from anywhere, in the palm of your hand, and at the source.
The aggressor is sort of opportunistic, so you can use different techniques. So in the case of a bystander, most of the work we do is to encourage people to support the target. Ignore the aggressor, support the target, because the target is sort of opportunistic and is looking for attention, and if they don't get attention, they kind of drift off. Meanwhile, you're fully supporting the target. In the case, the previous case I was talking about, where a counter demonstrator comes to a march, you can't. If you support their target, they're just going to find another one. They're just going to find another one. Because they came with the intention of creating that disruption. So in that case, you need to address the aggressor. And largely what we do there, there's a couple of techniques, but it's a number of techniques, but a lot of that work is basically listening, talking to them and getting them to be attacking you, and to be laying that anger on you, and through active listening, through paying attention to them and nodding and smiling and acting like you're really listening to them, you can keep them talking to you. And that way it makes them so they become harmless, because you can absorb that anger. You are intentionally absorbing that anger without it going out to other members in the demonstration they're less likely in general, but one of them in particular is likely to be, really react and really be hurt by it. So those are two different techniques that we're using in different situations, and we're getting a lot more calls for the bystander intervention training. And in fact, we know the case of the two who got shot, and I feel that if they had been trained by us, they wouldn't have gotten shot, because we used different techniques than they were using when they innocently and wonderfully tried to intervene in a case of what we would call, of somebody attacking somebody on racist lines.
Boy. Now, I think one time you mentioned some different techniques that people would use to really kind of help break the situation up a little bit. And I think one of them, who's the juggler?
Well, there are a number of jugglers. Yeah, Peter Doherty is one of the jugglers, and that's a great technique. It's nothing I haven't learned, or maybe I should just plain learn it. So oftentimes, particularly in either situation, and that when I'm saying either, in this case, I'm talking about either bystander intervention or typical peace team work at a demonstration, for example. Trying to just distract them. So let me step back and say, in violent situations, there are three normal responses to violence that we usually use. One is that we acquiesce to the demands of the violent, of the aggressor. They demand that we do something, and we go ahead and do it. The second is that we refuse to do it and respond back to them with counter-violence. And the third is that we either pretend it didn't happen or we ignore it. So that's the one that's more confusing for people. So an illustration of ignoring it would be, you're walking down the street and you see you see somebody attacking somebody else across the street and you ignore it. You see a guy trying to shove a woman against her wishes into a car, and you just ignore it. Or another one might be, usually it's a woman who comes to a meeting with a black eye, and she fell and hit the doorknob, or the dog did it, or there's some kind of an argument. And both of those tend to hide what happened. Now, all three of those responses are part of what we call the violent cycle. All three of them support the violent cycle. All three of them are one of the three responses the aggressor expects to have happen, and it supports their continuing their violence. So our work is to look for what we call the fourth way, something different. And that's really the key, is it is some way of distracting, and is something totally different. So it could be juggling. And if you can draw their attention to juggling and get them thinking about it, and maybe try to engage them in it, or somehow that some form of distraction. And it could be, one of the interesting things about it is because these distractions, part of the reason they work is because they aren't related to what's actually happening. They're just totally off the wall. You can develop a couple of scenarios that you plan to use, and you can use it again and again in different places. So you might use something like look at them and see if they have anything distinctive that they might be a little bit proud of. Their shoes, their water bottle, their purse, their tattoo, their belt buckle, their whatever, and say, "Oh wow, that is so cool! My brother was looking for one exactly like that. Where did you get that from?" And engage them in a big discussion about that. Or it might be something like, "Oh my God, I'm late. I'm lost. How do I get to Times Square? Oh my God, I got my son's there. My wife showed up with her. And, she's not responsible. She can just leave them there. How do I get in some kind of a busy engagement so that you can draw their attention and get them off of we call it distract, redirect, and reinforce. So you try to distract them from the conflict, and then you try to sort of redirect them into something else, and then you stay with that for a while until they can kind of lose their energy.
Can you share that nun story? Would that apply right now?
Which nun story was that?
Oh my goodness! I think she walked out, and there was a group of guys there. And
there's a number of stories. So there have been situations where, and I can think of actually a couple, where elderly women have walked out, and there have been some young troublemakers there who she was concerned that she was carrying groceries, and she was concerned that they were going to get attacked, that she was going to get attacked. And she walks out and walks directly to them and says, "Oh my God, I am so glad you were here. I was really worried, and I got to get these groceries to my car. Will you help me? Will you help me carry these to the car?" And the guys do it. There's also little individual situations like people who have been in grocery stores and seen somebody who was, like maybe a guy who had a screaming baby, and you know how irritating a screaming baby can be, and if they're not on it, and was getting really, really angry, and was like undoing the belt buckle and saying, "I'm going to give you something. You want to cry? I'll give you something to cry." And there's two different techniques I've heard people use successfully in this situation. One is to walk up to them and say, "Oh, your baby is so beautiful. It's too bad they're crying, but they are so beautiful. May I hold your baby for you?" And just disarm the situation. Another technique has been to please don't hurt the baby now. Don't hurt the baby. To redirect it, and and even to help him get through the situation, because in that case, his anger is based. He's legitimate. It isn't legitimate to push it on the children. And there's a million examples of successful work. Individuals doing it by themselves, or groups doing it. And groups doing it together.
Okay, now
and also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, because of lack of time, I wanted to jump to Palestine and how you apply some of these techniques there and why.
Okay, so Palestine's a complicated area because we have lots of things going on. So there are areas where, for example, when they put the famous apartheid wall, the wall which is which the World Court has said is illegal and unjust because it doesn't follow the boundary, it steals land. And so part of what it did was it would cut off big chunks of farmers' land. So now they live on one side of the wall and the farmers on the other side of the wall. And in order to do their farming, they have to go through a agricultural gate. And because of the imbalance of power, you have these lowly soldiers who open and close the gate and maintain the gate, and you have the Palestinians on the other side, but there's no normal connection because because there isn't any connection up through the Palestinians down to the Israelis. So the gates are supposed to be open at 7 o'clock, and but the soldiers might show up at 9 o'clock because there's no effort, there's nothing to really push them to be there at 7 o'clock. But they also might show up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So they show up, let's just say they show up at 6 o'clock, they get going a little early. They didn't mean to, but they get going a little bit early. They let all the Palestinians that are there through and don't bother to think that, it's supposed to be open till 7. So therefore, a farmer might show up at 7. So the result is that all the farmers have to show up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and sit there for hours waiting for the soldiers to open it. So one of the things we do is go to those gates and time when they're open and time when they're closed, so that we can report to the UN, so that the Israeli hierarchy begins to see that this is not okay and begin to develop some pressure on it. Other situations we've done, where again with the agricultural gates, is the Israelis were planning to close a gate because they decided it took them too much manpower. Now they put the wall in there, and they chose to put the wall, they chose to put the gate, but they decided that there's too much manpower, so they started to close the gate. And by bringing a lot of international attention, we were able to keep the gate open. Now, would it stay open forever? I don't know, but we certainly extended the period of time that gate continued to be used. And if that gate was closed, when you looked at the map, you realized that, the gate they wanted to go through wasn't all that far away, but there was no way to get from one gate to the other gate on the other side of the wall, so that they couldn't maintain they wouldn't have been able to maintain their farms. And if they don't maintain their farms, then the Israelis take them. There's other things we've done too, which is they're in areas where, so in some of the areas, the Israeli soldiers will just barge into a house, go up on the roof, and take charge of and occupy the roof so they can look over the area, and usually they do it at night, and just sit up there and watch everybody. And we've gotten calls from calls that the homeowners were terrified and didn't want them there. And we found that if we just go and sit by the gate, by the door, actually even not even going into the house. Usually we go into the house upstairs by the gate to the roof, but it's worked when we just sat down outside and make our presence known, and pretty soon the soldiers just leave. I don't know why, they just leave. It's hard for us in the security of this country to realize the trauma, because when they have the Israeli soldiers, when the Palestinians have the Israeli soldiers in the house, the Palestinians know they can very easily get shot, just because, and that would happen without any punishment happening to the Israeli soldiers. They would come up and say, "Oh, well, he was threatening me," or whatever, and that could happen. It's also a very real possibility that for some reason or other, one of the household members will get arrested. So having those soldiers there is very dangerous for them, and it's just amazing how thankful they are when they finally leave. And that's another piece of the work we've often done.
Well, what about the children?
The children. In fact, one of the houses where we did that in, they had gone through what was obviously the bedroom of a retarded girl, it's appalling what happens to the children. Trying to live in a world where everybody's living in terror, everybody is, it's very powerful when people see their parents just totally disrespected. That's very, very, very traumatizing for children, especially when it happens on an ongoing basis. And that's part of what happens there. So our efforts there, there's lots of other things. There was a university, Kuduri University, where the Israeli soldiers were just attacking the university. It happened 6 out of 7 days a week. They would come onto the campus, and when they came onto the campus, so for example, I was in the cafeteria one time and I had to leave because of the tear gas. I was at an art show one time and I had to leave because of the tear gas. And as the president of the university is saying, we're trying to create an environment where students can learn, where they can study, take their tests, and learn. And here we have this tear gas and people getting shot. So on a typical time that they would come on base, there would be like 6 students shot. Now that would not be. That would usually be a leg wound. They would shoot them in the legs rather than shoot them in the chest. So they wouldn't be killed, but they would be maimed. And that would usually it would be a permanent injury. And probably 20 students would be treated for gas inhalation. So it was an appalling situation. And we wound up, just trying to make a longer story short, we wound up getting permission to be up on top of the library, which was sort of the center of all of what happened. And it worked very well for us because we could go in there and do our report writing and our work using their Wi-Fi and their desks. So we could sit and wait until the Israeli soldiers showed up, and then we would go up on the roof and wear high visibility hats and vests because the university was very afraid that we would get shot by the soldiers. So what we did is we hung signs off the edge of the library when we went up there that said international observers, which of course had a couple of impacts. One is presumably it protected us, and secondly, it kind of put everybody on notice. And who knows what impact that had. But shortly after we started doing that, those attacks on the university just stopped, and that felt like we had made a difference for somebody, changed the situation a little bit. So there's a lot of that work that we do in the West Bank. There's a lot of that work we can do here in the U.S. There's a lot of that work we could do. Can I jump to another topic?
Yes.
Which is North Korea. And again, I think that we need to look at solutions other than armed resistance. And if you look at North Korea and you think of Kim Jong-un, the president, Prime Minister, I don't remember what his title is, but look at how he sees the situation. He sees a situation that Korea declared their independence at the end of World War II. The U.S. invaded, occupied Korea for a while, and there was a barrier for a while, and then we installed Ri in South Korea, and Ri kept making incursions into North Korea and threatening to attack North Korea, and then eventually North Korea came down and pushed us off the end of the continent, and then we moved a peninsula, and then we moved back onto the peninsula and pushed all the way to the top, tried to completely occupy all of Korea, and then we wound up. So we're the invaders here. You got to understand, they declared their independence, and they're the residents, and we invaded, and then we. After the armistice, every single year we have practiced the invasion of North Korea with the South Koreans. Every year we have these working. We practice it. So you look at Kim Jong-un, and he's saying, you guys want me to? What makes you think I trust you people? Why would I trust you? What are you doing? And we keep saying, well, well, we're going to, so we keep threatening them with military maneuvers and with military threat. And of course, he's been living in that all his life. There's nothing. He's not going to give into that. That just feeds into his fear and his understanding. And he has said for himself, he has said, no nuclear nation has been invaded. And he looks at nations where we have stopped the nuclear development and then invaded. And if you look at the nations, we've invaded everybody. Libya and Tunis, and Libya, and we're now in Syria and Iraq, etc. If Iraq had developed the nuclear weapons, we wouldn't have invaded. So he is not going to get rid of his nuclear weapons. On the other hand, I believe that it would be fairly straightforward to work with him. Which would be people say, well, China will take care of it. Well, first of all, the one thing China does not want is a destabilized Korea. They also don't want the U.S. too close to their border either, so that North Korea forms a boundary. But what they really don't want is the government to fall there and it go into chaos. That would be a disaster for them. So they're not capable of I don't know what our government seems to think they're going to do, but there's a limit to what they can do. And I'm going to offer a solution I think would be very effective, which is, first of all, we could open up negotiations because we know that Kim Jong-un is fascinated by basketball, and start using basketball delegations. Maybe we have to say, oh, no, it's illegal, you can't do that, and have them slip up quietly or whatever we have to do to begin.
Oh, my God, they did that with baseball all over the world.
Yeah, that's right. And so open up the thing. And then what I would suggest we do, they have basically a starving nation, and we start shipping food. If we were to, so it's easy for us to do. We had excess food. It would be wildly cheaper than the military maneuvers we're doing. And if we were to ship so much food that we could raise the standard of living in North Korea, which we could do, if we would ship so much food that we raise the standard of living, then we would have suddenly developed a control over what Kim Jong-un was doing, and we could then negotiate with him, because we would have a little, if we had put in enough food to raise the standard of living, then it would be very hard for him to lower it again.
That would just make so much sense. And I have to put in here, guys, we are now on iHeartRadio. I did get the plug in. Okay. We've got like 2 minutes left. This hour's just flown by.
Flown by. Well, I think that we have to understand that military solutions rarely work. They just don't work. I was at Standing Rock, and to watch what we did, what we have done and are doing in Standing Rock, or down at Black Mesa in Arizona, to watch the way it's a standard process. It's exactly the same thing which happened in eastern United States and during the colonial days, and all the way across the continent, where some business interests saw a profit in taking advantage of the Native Americans. They did some kind of a legal negotiation maneuver or trick, and then the U.S. government comes in and reinforces it with the courts or with the soldiers. That's how we took the Black Hills in South Dakota. We've done it again and again and again. I think it's really important to understand it has not stopped. What is happening in the lake there, missing the name of it, which the pipeline, the DAPL pipeline, is going underneath. That was a stealing of land also. We decided to build a lake, and I've met people whose houses were flooded. Coeur d'Alene Army engineer just told them, move out. It's no longer your house, it's going underwater. So that's important. I think it's really important for us as citizens to understand this process is no different than it was in colonial days, and the stealing of land and the crushing of people and the depriving them of their rights. And it's comfortable for me to sort of feel like, oh well, we did a terrible thing in the old days, but we don't do that anymore. It isn't true. We're still doing it to the Native Americans right now,
Elliott,
right in this country.
We've got probably 45 seconds. And I hate to interrupt you. I really do. You were so incredible. But if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to join the MetaPeace team and learn from you, how did they do it?
So we have a website. Thank you, Cathy, for focusing on me again. We have a website, which is MetaPeace Team, META, MetaPeaceTeam.org. Contact us through that. Contact me through that. You can contact me directly. I'll give you my email address. It's Elliott Adams, ELLIOTTADAMS @Juno, JUNO.com. And we can work together. We can work together to make this a better world, a more just world, a more profitable world for all of us. And a safer world for all of us. And I think that there's a lot of myths, and once you get around the myths, and Lord knows I've worked hard enough to get around them, that I think we see real possibilities for creating a better world for all of us, and yeah.
Wow. Will you promise to come back after you come back from Palestine and talk about your trip?
I would love to, Cathy, and I appreciate all the work you do trying to get rid of those myths I was talking about, and trying to help people see the truth and the love and move in a better direction.
Well, we do the same thing, just with different methods.
That's right. We all work together.
Well, on that,
everybody who's listening can help us. They can join us in doing this important work.
Absolutely. The more, the merrier. And on that note, we got to say aloha, everybody, and have a great week. And we'll catch you next week. Aloha.
Thank you.